What's up, guys? My name is Red Wing, and welcome to part 2 of What If Order 66 Failed. If you haven't checked out part 1 just yet, please feel free to do so now before continuing on with this video, and without further ado, let's begin with part 2 of our story. Our story continues 19 years later. While the Republic and Separatist Empire were still engaged in the Galactic Civil War, some citizens decided to create their own armies to aid the Jedi in their quest to defeat the Empire. The Jedi have been searching for Darth Sidious, aka Palpatine, for many years now, ever since informing the Senate of his betrayal. The Jedi would even decide to separate from the Republic to not only focus on this mission, but to make the Jedi Order into something better. However, ever since Order 66 failed, they had found absolutely nothing on Palpatine. What the Jedi didn't know, though, was that Palpatine was long dead, and that a new Emperor, Darth Vader, had taken over the Separatist Empire long ago. Darth Vader would have led many battles against the Republic, and would go against many Jedi who attempted to assist them. Whenever Vader went into battle, he left no survivors, showing no mercy to anyone who dared cross his path. Darth Vader no longer had any mercy towards anyone, as Anakin Skywalker was now gone for good, and any mercy that Vader had left died with Padme on the day that Sidious took her from him. As such, early into his reign, Vader would brutally kill all of the Inquisitors for their role in Padme's death, and the Inquisitors would ultimately die out. Vader would train two acolytes in the dark side of the Force who were more powerful than any of the Inquisitors, Galen Merrick and Ezra Bridger, but neither one of them would ever be his true apprentice, as Leia had already been chosen for the role due to the fact that she was also Vader's daughter. All three of Vader's acolytes would be trained for years before entering the battlefield, and they would all enter the battlefield at 16 years old, dominating each battle they entered and winning many times. Leia, at 19 years old, would go up against Obi-Wan on the planet Moraband when he was alone, looking for anything on Palpatine, and Obi-Wan would ultimately escape after realizing who this girl was. After Obi-Wan returns to Tython, Luke Skywalker, having been trained by Obi-Wan since birth, is named a Jedi Knight after a successful solo mission against the Separatist Empire on his father's homeworld of Tatooine. Luke had been introduced to Owen and Beru at a young age, and would be given time to spend with his family. The reason for this was because Obi-Wan realized that one of the reasons that Anakin fell to the dark side was because he was denied any connection to his loved ones. Anakin was never allowed to have attachments, and so, after some instruction from Yoda in the early days of Luke's life, Qui-Gon's Force Ghost would help Obi-Wan to mentor and train Luke in the way that Obi-Wan should have trained Anakin. After Luke's knighting ceremony, Yoda would call a council meeting where Luke would be in attendance, as he was the only hope towards defeating the Empire and the Sith. Only Obi-Wan, Plo Koon, and Yoda were in attendance in this council meeting. Yoda explains that the reason for this was because the rest of the council, while Obi-Wan was away on Moraband, had went to the planet of Mustafar and finally found Palpatine, but that they had all met brutal yet swift deaths, as did the soldiers that aided them. Yoda calls a mission to the planet of Malachor 5, where Palpatine was allegedly going next. Obi-Wan says that he and Luke can get a squad together and leave immediately, but Yoda explains that only Obi-Wan, Luke, Plo, and Yoda himself would be allowed to go. Yoda did not want any civilian casualties in the fight against the Sith, and so he decided to do everything he could to have the citizens stay out of this. So, Obi-Wan, Plo, Yoda, and Luke would prepare a ship to leave for Malachor 5. However, the four Jedi would be in for a very unfortunate surprise. Meanwhile, on Mustafar, Leia returns to her father, Emperor Vader, who had only grown more powerful during these nearly 2 decades of training, and she informs him of her battle against Obi-Wan. Vader scolds Leia for her failure to kill Obi-Wan. However, Vader says that they would soon get their chance to kill him. Vader says that he had killed most of the Jedi Council, and as they were attempting to communicate their position to Yoda, had successfully laid a trap for the Jedi on Malachor 5, and that Obi-Wan would surely be present when the quote-unquote location of Palpatine was discovered. So, Leia, Vader, Ezra, and Galen, who referred to himself as Starkiller, would leave in their ship for Malachor 5. The Jedi would be no more after this mission. When Yoda, Obi-Wan, Plo, and Luke reach Malachor 5, they find a Sith temple and look around. Eventually, they reach the top of the Sith temple, where they would find an ancient Sith superweapon capable of destroying any life all over the galaxy upon the command of the Sith Lord wielding it. They would find 4 hooded beings standing in front of the weapon, their backs turned towards the Jedi, and one of which the Jedi assumed was Palpatine. The Jedi would ignite their weapons, but the hooded figures turn around, revealing Vader, Starkiller, Ezra, and Leia. Obi-Wan is shocked to see his old student, and demands to know the location of Palpatine. Vader, since the Jedi would not leave here alive anyway, would tell them the truth, that he had killed Palpatine nearly 20 years ago after Padme had died to Sidious's blade, and took his place with Leia by his side. The Sith and their acolytes would then ignite their lightsabers when the Jedi were simply unable to move at this revelation, and an epic battle begins between the Force users. Ezra would go up against Plo, but Ezra would die early on, seeing as he did not have the experience that Plo had. Yoda would go up against Starkiller, and Yoda would gain the upper hand early on in the fight. But in the fight between Obi-Wan and Emperor Vader, Vader would be the one to gain the upper hand, as he was simply more powerful in this timeline. Luke would ultimately go up against Leia, with whom he sensed a very familiar connection. However, Luke is able to knock Leia out after she is suddenly distracted with Ezra's death. Plo would ultimately help Obi-Wan against Vader, but Vader, having surpassed both of them in power, would force push Obi-Wan away from the battle while using Force Lightning, before killing Plo in one flick of his wrist. Vader, having knocked Obi-Wan out, would resolve to fight Yoda, right as Yoda was able to kill Starkiller. The fight instantly turns in the favor of the Sith. But, just as Vader was about to deliver the killing blow to the Grand Master, he is suddenly pushed away from Yoda by use of the Force, in a way that was so powerful that he hadn't felt this kind of power since his fight with Palpatine. Vader looked to see who had pushed him, and Luke stood over him as he demanded to know just who this young boy was. Luke exclaims that he is a Jedi, like his father before him. Vader then attempts to use Force Lightning on the boy, the lightning tendrils being red, and Luke would block this with his weapon as Vader continued to fire. Vader would assess the boy's power, and he would see that the boy's potential was equal, potentially even more than that of his daughter. Vader would stop his lightning barrage in favor of lightsaber combat in order to see Luke's skills with a lightsaber. Luke would ultimately surprise Vader and even almost defeat him. However, Vader decided to stop toying with him and pushed Luke backwards by use of the Force. Vader then attempted to use Force Lightning to shock the boy, but Obi-Wan, sensing the danger, leaps in front of Luke at the last second, and Obi-Wan is obliterated by Vader's lightning, sacrificing himself for his student the same way Qui-Gon had done for him. Luke would become enraged and attempt to attack Vader, who Luke still didn't know was his own father. But Yoda would push Luke away from the battlefield in order to take on Vader and yells for Luke to leave. Luke refuses, and the two Jedi would fight with Vader, but Vader subdues Luke early on. Yoda, shortly afterwards, would be outmatched, and he would cry one final time for Luke to leave the planet and report what had happened to the rest of the Jedi. Luke, finally seeing what Yoda was thinking, would attempt to do so, but Vader pulls Luke back by use of the Force, choking him in his hand as he lifted the boy up. Vader exclaims that he doesn't know who Luke is, but that he would figure it out, and that no Jedi would dare stand in his way, as he then kills Yoda. Luke is horrified at the deaths of Obi-Wan and Yoda and attempts to attack Vader again, but Vader would deflect this and lift Luke into the air as he's still choked. Leia would then get up as she would witness her father use the Sith superweapon to obliterate any remaining Jedi, but he commands it to keep Luke alive. The superweapon obeys Vader without question, and the entirety of the Jedi Order is eliminated within milliseconds, effectively making Luke the last of the Jedi, as Vader would then knock him out and take him prisoner aboard his ship, taking Leia with him. Vader would use the Force while flying back to Mustafar in order to determine the boy's identity, and to his utter surprise, he has a vision in the Force where Padme gave birth to twins, and one of the twins would grow up under Obi-Wan's tutelage. Vader would even get the boy's name, Luke Skywalker, and Vader deduces that this boy was in fact his own son, stolen from him by the Jedi in order to have some sort of secret advantage against him. However, what Vader didn't know was how well Luke had been trained. They would land on Mustafar, and Vader would ultimately pit his daughter against her brother in order to determine as to whether or not Leia would remain his apprentice. Luke is shocked upon the revelation that Leia is his sister, and Vader further reveals that he was Luke's father. Luke, stunned, would do absolutely nothing but question Yoda and Obi-Wan as to why he was not told of this. This gives Leia an advantage, and she attacks him. Leia does have an advantage over Luke, but with the revelation that he was her brother, she was conflicted. Luke senses this and attempts to appeal to the good inside of his sister. After about 5 minutes of this, Leia begins to hesitate as Luke's words were starting to affect her. Vader then has enough and shocks both of his children with Force lightning. It was at this moment that Vader would see the memory of Padme being killed by Sidious, and, seeing that he was now doing what he swore he never would, Anakin Skywalker would suddenly break free from Darth Vader and return to the light side. He would stop his use of Force lightning, and he would apologize profusely to his daughter for the harsh treatment that he had bestowed upon her throughout her life. And he would apologize to Luke as well for everything he had just done. After this happens, a fleet of Republic Venators emerge from hyperspace, and Luke reveals that he had secretly turned on a tracking device that led the Republic to their location. Luke would tell his family that they have to leave, but Anakin tells them, no, the twins have to leave. Leia asks what Anakin is talking about, and Anakin tells her that the Republic is planning an orbital bombardment and that they have to immediately leave the planet in order to survive. Luke asks what Anakin is going to do, and Anakin says that he is going to stay as the bombardment occurs as punishment for his crimes as Vader. Leia refutes this, knowing that Anakin would die. To this, Anakin simply says the words, "I know," before pushing both of his children away with the Force and shutting the door, locking it. The Skywalker twins, having no choice, would ultimately take Vader's ship and leave the planet as the bombardment begins, and Anakin, finally at peace knowing that he had protected his children as Padme would have wanted, dies on the fiery planet, having accepted his fate. With Anakin's death, the tide of the war is turned in favor of the Republic, and the Republic wins the galactic civil war on the planet of Serena. Mon Mothma, who is currently the Chancellor of the Republic, would allow Luke to rebuild the Jedi Order, and Leia would go off on her own into the galaxy, promising to visit Luke whenever she could, and finally ridding herself of the dark side, effectively destroying the Sith. Luke agrees, and he begins the long process of rebuilding the Jedi Order in the way that he felt Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and Yoda would have wanted. Folks, that is our story for today. This was definitely my favorite of the what ifs so far. I felt like it really did go all out on this one, especially with the whole super weapon part on Malachor. Anyway, let me know what other what if ideas you have in the comments below. huge thanks to all of you for more than 70 subscribers now. Again, I really do enjoy doing this for you guys, as getting to share my what if stories as well as possibly my original content with the world is a dream of mine, and you're all helping with that. So again, huge thanks to all of you. We are again officially on the road to 100 subscribers and approaching those triple digits very, very quickly. Do subscribe if you're new. Follow my Instagram at Star Wars Red Wing. It really does help me out. Thanks for watching. May the Force be with you, and I'll see y'all later.